the number one question, really, what problem is your business solving? Because if your business isn't solving a problem, then nobody needs it. If nobody wanted to pick up a fresh, healthy local meal to take home because everyone's busy and there's not really something like that exists in this small town, I already know that because I've done that market research. But if I got the feedback that that's something that nobody wanted here, I wouldn't want to pursue this.
A movement is underway of people abandoning the emotional, physical, and financial expenses of city living and crafting their own purpose, livelihoods, and joy in the rural reaches. The Urban Exodus podcast shares the wisdom, wit, and stories of those who decided to embark on the road less traveled, to pursue their own interpretation of the good life. Small business owners, change makers, artists, farmers, and more, working towards building a better future for themselves and their fellow citizens. This podcast is for country dreamers, rural folk, and urban dwellers alike who want to feel more connected to the natural world and the purpose and choices in their lives. I'm Melissa Hessler. Welcome to the Urban Exodus. I'm excited to invite you to my conversation with Melissa Rebholz, a chef, farmer, and the passionate driving force behind Midge's Kitchen in Wheeling, West Virginia. I initially connected with Melissa back in 2015 when she was farming solo in the rural Appalachian town of Greenville, Tennessee. She later had to leave that home and the farm that she had built to remove herself from an abusive relationship and start from scratch. She's moved several times since leaving Tennessee and has recently planted roots in Wheeling. The pandemic made Melissa realize that she needed to stop postponing her dreams and go after them. She decided to leave her job and enroll in a small business incubator program so that she could finally build her own food business. Melissa is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to food, farming, building community in a new place, and listening to your community's wants and needs so that you can build a sustaining small business in a small town. I'm really excited to have Melissa here with us today. I'm inspired by you. You're a fearless woman. You go after the things that you want, and I just think that you have really strong values and you really care about people and you're an extremely hard worker and you really inspire me with just like the moves that you've made in your life to work towards things that you are passionate about. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. And I guess to get started, I'd love to hear a little bit of your personal backstory, where you grew up and how you ended up where you are today.
Well, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And I was raised there. I lived there till I was about 17 and then moved down to New York City. I initially went to New York City for college and then got really homesick, was there for a couple semesters, came back for a little while to Buffalo, and then ultimately ended up moving back to New York and trying to study a bunch of different programs. Didn't really work out for me. I kept just working random jobs. And then eventually that led me to one summer I was unemployed and it led me to volunteer with Grow NYC that runs most of the farmers markets in New York. And I loved working at the farmers market. It got me out there every weekend, every Saturday. I got the job of doing cooking demos there. And at the time, I also had a friend that was attending the culinary chef's training program at the Natural Gourmet Institute, where then I ended up going and just listening to her stories. So that's how I kind of got into food in the first place. And then I moved around. I moved to a farm on Long Island for about 9.5 months. That was my first kind of foray into farming right after culinary school, like right after I graduated. I was working part-time in a restaurant in my neighborhood in Brooklyn and still managing farmers markets. And then I moved out to the farm really just kind of because I thought that being out there for 9.5 months was just going to make me a better chef. I thought, I'm going to go back to the city. I'm going to learn how to grow food. I'm going to work in the field. I'm going to be able to experiment every single day. I'm going to take the best, freshest food home and cook with it. And after I did that, I didn't want to move back to the city because I knew, I don't know, it was just I liked the lifestyle out there, and I liked the pace of the work out there. And then I also realized that there was a divide growing between myself, my values, and the values of the people that I knew in the city. And that's not a bad thing or anything. It's just, becoming a different person. So then I moved to Northern California to farm also, because you can farm year round there. And I wanted to just live someplace else other than New York. So I worked on a farm in Mendocino County for a couple of years, and then moved down to Sonoma County, did a internship at Green String Farm in Petaluma, and then ended up working on Bob Kennard's farm in Glen Ellen, who I was doing the internship with. And he grows a huge amount of vegetables and fruits for Chez Panisse. So it was cool because then I had the culinary connection. We were growing for a restaurant. We were connected with the chefs there. And I was there for 2 years and ended up moving to Tennessee just because California is really expensive. It was the main reason why I left there, was because I knew I was never going to buy land there. It's all the way across the country. My entire family still lived in Buffalo, New York at the time, and it just was impossible with how much I worked to really visit them that often. So that anytime I did get an extended break, it was like the only place I could ever go was Buffalo. And that's not, it's great to see your family, but it's not much of a vacation if you're just going to the place you grew up every time you have a week off. So I moved back to Tennessee to be sort of in a day's driving distance from them. Then farmed there for 5 years and decided to go back to working kitchens full time, which really just came out of standing behind a table and selling at the farmers market and having CSAs, and just it's inspiring to see so many people my age and younger at that time that were doing that. But I felt like, man, my market's Asheville. There's so many people selling to these restaurants in Asheville, the small town in Tennessee I live in. There's not enough business here for me. I'm just not making enough money growing vegetables, and I'm not going to invest a lot more money into the equipment that would make me more efficient because I have more than I can sell already. So I also really just had to make a decision about where I care about farming and local food so much, and I want farmers to be successful, and maybe me being a farmer myself isn't the best way for me to do that. Maybe I move to a place where there are people like me trying to sell stuff that they have extra of. And maybe I work as a chef there. And I feel like that was a better way to contribute to a local food economy wherever I was, as a buyer and not a grower.
Having worked in food your entire career, either growing it, writing about it, or making it, the pandemic really made it abundantly clear how essential and exploitive agriculture and the food industry jobs are. In your opinion, what systemic changes do you think need to be made in order to fix those broken systems?
It's kind of a multifaceted question because, in my opinion, almost every solution to every problem that exists within the broken food system comes down to living wages across the board, from farmers, packers, long-haul truck drivers, distributors, restaurant workers. So it's hard because the conversation now, I see a lot of people circulate memes and stuff about paying living wages. And then I know some restaurants that have gone their way to say we're giving people benefits, we're providing living wages. We used to have a tasting menu that's $50, now it's $85. And it's great that people can do that, but you can only do that in certain markets. So I would love to advocate for everybody across the board producing food to make more money. But at the same time, everybody else that's buying food needs to make more money. So that's where it's like, I'm here in Northern Appalachia in West Virginia. And if I was really going to advocate loudly that everyone needs to start paying living wages and giving all their employees benefits, I know people that would probably put out of business. So It's hard because it's like a part of a larger systemic issue, with the way that how people are living right now and the shrinking middle class and, access to services like healthcare. I don't think we can improve this one thing, which is our food system. If nobody can afford it anymore, that's not improving it. So I guess I don't know the answer to that question.
You recently discussed the inaccessibility and really the critical opinions in the farm to table movement. And I think that has real merit, and it's true. As someone who's worked in both agriculture and food, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on this topic and ways that maybe we can make it easier for people to have access to fresh seasonal produce and to remove kind of the pretense of if you can't do it this way, then you aren't doing it right.
I think that we get caught up on things like, farm to table as a term. And it's funny because I'm going to start doing some farm to table, I guess, sort of events this season around here now that we're doing things again. And I was thinking, what can I call it instead of farm to table? I kind of came up with seasonal dinners because I think that there's a connotation now with that term that it's this elitist, really expensive experience that happens either when a town closes down their main street and puts, an elaborate table full of flowers and has all of these servers and some chef that everyone's heard of, and then you pay tickets. I mean, I recently looked up Outstanding in the Field, that organization. And I'm not saying that it doesn't cost a ton of money to put on the kind of dinners that they produce, but I just looked just to get a gauge, when they started, I remember their dinners were around $200, and I looked at a fall dinner that they're doing at a farm in Nashville, and it's $312 a person for the ticket for the dinner. And to me, that's man, I mean, I know people are paying to go and eat at restaurants like French Laundry and Per Se for $300 a person easily, if not more. But I feel like farm to table is creating this myth that you have to be affluent or you have to save up for a special event to go to a farm and eat the food that was grown there. And, that's the part of it that I would like to change. I feel like we could get away from just super styling everything too. That's a part where I think about cutting money out of that. It's pay the chef good. It's hard to set up an entire outdoor kitchen in a location that probably doesn't have facilities. That's a lot of work. And transporting food, having servers, everyone doing that should get paid well. But sometimes when I look at those productions, it's they've just made it so highly styled, and it's almost like it's not even for the people there to enjoy. It's so that we can document it in this way, for social media or a glossy magazine page or something. And it's who cares about that? Let's just put some blankets on the ground and eat some fresh food at a farm, and let's make it vegetarian if the proteins were all the money, where you're spending a lot of the money. And let's have sliding scale farm to table or seasonal dinners at farms that cost $25, $35. I've done a sliding scale seasonal dinner before at a restaurant in Knoxville, and we did, I think, $25 to $50, and everyone paid right in the middle of that. And I felt like that was really fair, and everyone had a really fresh meal. Put a drink table out and make it self-service. Don't have wine or alcohol. Cut down the cost where you can, but I think that we have to have another alternative for people having access to fresh food in these kind of events. And it's not even, I felt like it wasn't even for me. It's just, it's interesting when you're growing food or you're cooking food, or you're working in the kitchen of a restaurant that serves, I guess, what people would call farm to table food, or you're delivering food to a restaurant. And I remember delivering food to restaurants in Asheville and hoping that someone would offer us a plate or something, or if we went to eat there, that they would comp us a couple of things because we couldn't afford to eat there to the restaurant we were selling to.
I actually remember photographing I think he's the culinary farmer there. Evan Chender, and I asked him, how he set his prices, what was his philosophy on that. And he was like, quite honestly, I set my prices so that I can afford to be able to eat at the restaurants that I sell my produce to. It was crazy to even think about that, but it's absolutely true that the prices are really hard. I mean, obviously, you've worked in the restaurant industry, so you know how slim and hard margins are, but there have to be some other inventive ways to make it more accessible for more people. So that being said, let's talk about your new business venture, which you are starting in Wheeling. Can you share with us your vision for Midge's Kitchen and any obstacles you faced while you're trying to make this dream a reality?
Yeah, so Midge's Kitchen is something that I've been thinking of for a while. I know ever since I kind of went back, even when I was farming, but really since I went back to cooking full time, I just wanted to find a commercial kitchen space where I could work by myself and for myself. And that has been the biggest obstacle because, there's a lot of spaces. Every place I've lived, someone would say, oh yeah, this is empty and it used to be a restaurant. You should use that. And besides the fact that possibly there might be some ductwork there, still in place, when somebody closes a restaurant, they sell their equipment or they move their equipment to the new place. So it would have been a lot of places that people have recommended to me that I'll go look, and it's just bare bones and it's incredibly expensive. And so I've been looking, I've lived in places that are so small that, once you get into like a bigger town or something, there's usually like an incubator type setup. I know people that run those and people that run food businesses out of those in other towns. But in the small places I've lived, just nothing like a shared kitchen space or commissary kitchen has ever existed. So finding the space, I would say, and trying not to spend a bunch of money up front to get it started has been the biggest obstacle. But so I found a little tiny kitchen here in Wheeling, and my vision for this business is to create a menu weekly online and take orders, and for, seasonal healthy meals cooked from scratch that people would have a couple days to go on, look at the website, place their orders, and then a few days later they would be able to pick them up. And I'm hoping that the goal with that is just to help people supplement throughout the week because everybody's busy, just, to have fresh salads or breakfasts and dinners, a mix of those things that they could pick up and say, okay, this is one day that I don't have to cook this meal and I'm still eating a really good version of it. And I'm also supporting local farms because that's another thing. You have a farmer's market on Saturday morning. People have things to take their kids to on Saturday mornings. People go to a wedding. I mean, there's so many plans they have on the weekend. So it kind of gives people the opportunity to still support local farms because I'm buying that from them and I'm doing the cooking for them. So primarily that's what I would like to do there. And also it is in downtown Wheeling. So I am going to create also a menu for the offices around that area to do small office catering during the week for things like meetings and people ordering lunches and stuff for special events at offices. And then, it's a restaurant. It's a tiny restaurant outside of the kitchen. So I also hope to do monthly seasonal dinners and do things like, people can rent the space and have a private dinner in there. And just see what I can do with it. It's kind of just whatever I want to make it. I just wanted a space to lease that had what I needed in it to go to work, because even doing recipe development for other people, which I've been doing some of now, it's waking up and working inside of your house is not easy. I'm not one of those people, it's my kitchen's there, it's fine. But once I get into my kitchen, I'm like, oh, let me organize the pantry. Or like, oh, look, here's something to look at on my phone. And it's like, I need to wake up in the morning, make myself a coffee to go and physically go to a workspace to concentrate. So that's what the kitchen is too for me.
Calling all small and rurally based business owners. Do you love Urban Exodus and want to help support our continued programming? Become a founding partner of the new Urban Exodus shop. You can reach an engaged customer base who believes in supporting farmers, makers, artisans, and small business owners in rural economies. We are looking for culinary delights, home goods, body goods, art, textiles, adornments, more. We just are really interested to see what you're creating and try to help you get it out there to a larger audience. And we're looking for vendors who make quality products, who pay a living wage, and who run sustainably minded operations. And if this sounds like you and your business and you want to learn more, please click the partnerships page on urbanexodus.com. I also think it's interesting, too, that the pandemic has kind of changed the model for a lot of restaurants. And there's been so much innovation in like food service and restaurants as well. So it's exciting to see what you're going to be able to build there. Obviously, building a business from scratch is no easy feat. What advice would you give to someone considering opening a food-focused business in a small community on ways that they should prepare or research to better ensure a successful venture?
Well, first of all, I participated in a program called Co-Starters, which is all over the country. I even believe that it's available in other countries, but you can find their website and then you can look by probably your zip code where they offer it near you. And for me, that was really beneficial. It's basically like a business planning workshop that you do with a group of other people. I think there were about 10 or 13 people in my group, but luckily there were at least 4 other people that were also doing food related businesses. It's 9 weeks long, and every week there's a different guest that it's either, someone from a microloan company, CPAs, lawyers, other small business owners. So to me, just connecting with local organizations wherever you live that are doing small business development or any kind of services that you could get for free from organizations like that. There's nonprofits doing it. There's city-run organizations doing it. And this particular cohort of co-starters was put on by Wheeling Heritage here. And I think whatever town you're in, whatever resources that are available, especially for free for entrepreneurs, I would 100% sign up for that. And the first day of that class, what they suggest is to find a mentor in your field. And that would be my other big suggestion for anyone wanting to start anything, is to really talk to someone who's done it. There's a couple people so happy that most of the time when you move places, especially in towns that are small like this, the food scene is really small and you get connected to people, and nobody's like has this competitive spirit. Everyone has like a very community help each other spirit. So I immediately connected with some other women that are either chefs or restaurant owners here. And the knowledge that they can share with me is, I think, invaluable. I think it's really, really important to be sharing your ideas, and then to be sharing your ideas with everyone in your community all the time too. That was a big co-starters thing too. Like if you're not talking to your market, it's really hard to know what people want. So I think working in the industry that you want to start a business in before you just start a business in it is important. I don't think I could have moved to Wheeling, West Virginia, and just said, hey, let me find a commercial kitchen to rent. I'm going to try to make a website and sell food to people. I was out there in the public for the first couple of years in an open kitchen in a market selling food to people. So I got to connect with lots of customers and find out what people want and meet people that would potentially support me in my next venture.
That's such good advice on every level, because I think that a lot of people get excited. Maybe they move to a new area and they're like, I'm going to start a business right now. But really, like, working in that field, in the community, connecting with all of your community members, running ideas by them, that just makes it so much more real. And when you're ready to open, everybody is already rooting for you. Really sets yourself up for success.
Also be open to taking criticism. If you have ideas that people are like, yeah, I don't really think I would support that, or that's not something that I would need, listen to that, because your business isn't for you. You want people to buy it. So that's another thing that I think some people get caught up in what they want to do. And it's like the number one question, really, what problem is your business solving? Because if your business isn't solving a problem, then nobody needs it. If nobody wanted to pick up a fresh, healthy local meal to take home because everyone's busy and there's not really something like that exists in this small town, I already know that because I've done that market research. But if I got the feedback that that's something that nobody wanted here, I wouldn't want to pursue this.
Yeah, you'd have to change your model, and being open to changing that model. What do you love most about Wheeling, and what would you say to any naysayers or people who are considering moving to the state?
The thing that I love the most is I like smaller communities. So Wheeling was kind of the perfect size for me when I came here. I love the topography of West Virginia. I like that there's mountains and rivers and farmland. And I mean, Wheeling itself is just kind of like nestled along the Ohio River. And it's a small enough place that I feel like there's still a lot to do. It's hard because almost the entire time I've lived here, there has been nothing to do because we've been in a pandemic. But now that things are starting to go again, I mean, people would tell me like, oh yeah, we usually have this festival and this, and they have music in different parks like every night of the week. And I think some people that are used to bigger places, maybe they want more to do, but I like a smaller place with less options. I feel like you're not getting pulled in different directions. And then also when you go places, it's like, I don't need to make a plan to go with somebody down to something that's going on this week because I can just show up and probably I'm going to know a bunch of people there. So I like that. I also have to say that my opinion of West Virginia comes as an outsider who moved here for a relatively decent paying job in an industry I love as a white heterosexual woman. So my view of what it's like here comes from through basically the lens of those privileges. So I can understand. I have met a lot of people here that would love to leave here and that don't see it as a welcoming place. West Virginia did just pass an anti-trans sports bill. You know, there's been a lot of articles and different news outlets in West Virginia interviewing trans people that want to leave the state because they don't feel welcome here. And there's counties that don't have drinkable water here. So I feel like when you move to a place as an outsider, you have to remember, like, I have an opportunity here, but it doesn't mean that this is a land of opportunity. I love the topography and I love the town here, but I think that probably it's a difficult place to live for a lot of people.
That's a really good point. One thing that a lot of people have said in the interviews that I've done through Urban Exodus is that one thing that they really miss when they move to more rural areas is diversity. And I know that West Virginia is a predominantly white state. What advice would you give to people in rural and predominantly white areas to encourage greater equality, diversity, and inclusion?
If that's what people want to see happen in the area they live, then they need to be supporting programs that give priority for land access and resources around them to people that aren't white. You know, like if you want diversity and you live in a rural white community, I feel like you really have to be involved in politics and you have to really advocate for, you know, anybody else to get their foot in the door in that place. And then, you know, to make land accessible and affordable. I know there's like different land back programs and stuff. And I feel like if people want more people to be able to move to their community, they have to be a part of that. You can't just sit there and wish your community was more diverse. I think that's an active role.
As someone who has moved between both urban and rural areas, there's this kind of perception in media that focuses on the ideological and political rifts between urban and rural America. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
It's a heavy focus in the media on that, but to me, that just seems kind of lazy. That's like lazy reporting. Like, you know, I mean, I don't think that you can just divide things up like that. But I also feel like there are these little like hippie towns in the middle of nowhere in places like West Virginia and even in Tennessee. And then I feel like there's going to be conservative pockets everywhere. I mean, I think it's easy to just drive out in the country as a media outlet and find a guy with a Confederate flag to say some racist stuff on camera. But it would be a lot more nuanced to talk to people, you know, just to talk to people about redlining and segregation in liberal cities, because it's not that the same issues aren't happening. It's just that the way that we tally votes in our country makes it seem like everybody that lives in New York is very liberal, and they're not. I mean, I can go outside of where I lived, even in Buffalo, there's heavy conservative population, but I just think that perpetuating that stereotype is just lazy reporting.
I totally agree with you. I really wanted to get your take on that because I knew you could articulate it in a perfect way. Excellent. You've lived in different places all over the United States. What advice do you have for someone who feels stuck where they are, either by choice or by circumstance, but they're scared to uproot themselves and move somewhere new?
There's different reasons why people are stuck. I've thought about how I've been able to move around so much and just thought, wow, I've just feel really lucky that I've been able to move around as much as I can. And when I'm somewhere that doesn't feel like it's working out for me, that I can just go and do that. But I don't have kids. I don't have anyone else to take care of. I've gotten job opportunities other places. As far as if you just feel stuck in an area and you kind of think, I'm scared maybe to move someplace alone, or even just as a family, like we don't know any other families there or something. This is the one situation where I feel like social media can really be used for good and not evil because it's easy to look up places. I mean, when I was interviewing to come and work with the organization in Wheeling, I started looking up, different hashtags about Wheeling and different restaurants. And I started following the accounts of people that lived here that were artists and other people that were cooking and people that were farming and stuff. So, and a lot of times I just feel like there's a not creepy way to even message people that you might, when you first move someplace. And I guess for me, as someone that works in food, it's always super easy to connect because I'm always looking for people to buy food from. And, immediately also with the background I've had in farming and stuff, I have no problem contacting a farmer and saying like, hey, can I come out and see your farm? Or I'd like to get a list of what you're selling. And then you kind of connect with people like that. But there have been times where it's been really hard for me to move to new places. It's always kind of that first year, and it can feel really lonely. Even if you are starting to connect with people, it can feel really, really lonely if it's a pandemic. And but my thing is that you just got to stick with it. It's easy to go someplace and even after a year or two kind of feel like, oh, maybe I'm not building the communities that I wanted to build here, or I feel lonely, or I'm not just finding my groove. But I think it takes a long time. And I feel like you got to just play that long game when you move new places. And I like making pro and con lists a lot because sometimes you romanticize the places that you've been. Like, oh, I'm like when I first left Tennessee, it was so hard that whole first year. I just missed my friends so much. I had such a good community. And then I had to remind myself of all the reasons why it wasn't working for me to live there, what I moved to do. And then also I had to remind myself that it took me 2 or 3 years to find that group of people out of the 5 years I lived there. It didn't happen right away. So just to keep working on forming relationships with people and it'll happen. It isn't going to happen fast if you're an adult person that moves someplace for a job where you don't work with a lot of people. I feel like when we're young, we move places and it's like we're going to college or something. We immediately have huge groups of friends. It's definitely harder when you're older and it's harder when you're alone, but it just takes a lot of work to just keep finding people. Also, I'm going to say volunteering. Like volunteering is an awesome thing. Like when you move to a place and you see organizations, whether it's, political or nonprofit or something, or any kind of city organization, like find something that you have an interest in doing and go and volunteer to do it. You're going to have an immediate group of people you connect with there.
All of those things are just the very best ways that you can set yourself up to meet like-minded individuals too. Just any sort of interests that you have, try to get involved in those right away, even if it's like an adult sports league or something like that. There are ways to meet your people. I appreciate how honest you've been on the obstacles that you've had to overcome to get where you are today. And I'd love if you had any words of advice or encouragement for people who might feel trapped in an emotional or physically abusive relationship on ways to either get out or heal from that.
My main piece of advice there would be if you can possibly not get into it in the first place. But, and I only say that because I think there's always red flags. And I feel like, situation that I had being in an emotionally abusive relationship, and then also trying to work with that person, like I saw that I didn't listen to my gut in the first place. And I feel like, listening to your gut instinct about people is really important. And I think that that's really hard when you're kind of an empathetic person and you're trying to always give people the benefit of the doubt. And then something kind of happens that rubs you the wrong way, or, isn't aligning with the values that you have, but you write it off because you're always trying to give people a chance. I think that's how that kind of happens a little bit. But I also know that especially in rural areas, I just haven't tried it in cities, there's a lot of free mental health resources. And I feel like talking to someone about your situation, if you're feeling trapped, that's not, just even your friends or family, talking to a professional is really helpful. There's lots of resources. And then also, I'll never forget just being so unhappy on the farm and talking to a friend of mine on the phone and needing to get out of this abusive relationship. But it was so tied to my housing and my income that was my main thing that was keeping me there. So I was like, how, if I leave this, I have to lose everything. And my friend just said to me, those are just things and this is your life. And that was the day that I was like, yeah, you know what? I actually would be willing to lose everything in my house and my farm, to leave this situation. So I think just acknowledging that maybe the things that are holding you in like an unhealthy situation are material things, and your person is more important than those things. So if all you have to do is give up everything you own and start over, then give everything up you own and start over.
Do you have any thoughts on those red flags? Because I think unless you've actually been through it, which I think a lot of men and women have been through toxic, emotionally or physically abusive relationships, and it doesn't matter how strong you are, or it happens to so many people. What are some of those red flags that you wished you would have listened to in the beginning, looking back?
I don't know where this came from, but somewhere I saw the phrase where someone said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I always just come back to that because I think very early on, to me, it comes down to where your values are. If somebody respects, an emotion that you're expressing, that you're feeling, or even time. I feel like time is a really big one. If someone's constantly changing plans and you're constantly playing by their rules, whether it's the time that you're going to leave to go someplace or when you're going to get a job done. And I think that red flags are when you can tell that somebody's not considering where you're coming from. There's certain phrases that I would always consider a red flag now, which is when people say things like you're too emotional, or they just downplay what you're feeling. And to me, that's, an insidious type of emotional abuse where you start to question it yourself and you think like, oh, am I too emotional? Or like, oh yeah, I'm getting too worked up about this. But what you're feeling is valid. It's like when other people try to invalidate your feelings or your opinions on something, or even just that you can have a difference of opinion, even if it's, you're looking at the news and it's something political and you have a difference of opinion and someone just will basically berate you into believing what they believe. That's not a good relationship, and I feel like those kind of red flags, if someone could just peacefully disagree with you or say, you know what, you're an intelligent person and we've both taken in the same information and this is how I interpreted it and this is how you interpreted it, and that's okay and that can be different. But when people have to like persuade you to their side all the time and downplay how you feel about things, I think that's a major red flag. That and not respecting your time, not respecting people that are important to you, not doing what they say they're going to do. When people say they're going to do something and they consistently don't show up for you, I don't give people that many chances to do that anymore. It's like, just back to that phrase. Like when you show me who you are at first, I'm going to believe you. As soon as I see something really toxic, I'm going to think that's who you are. And we keep wanting to see the best in people, and sometimes that's not good.
I just wanted to give an enormous thank you to all of you listeners who have made contributions toward the production of this podcast. Every season, I spend about 100 hours preparing, writing, editing, interviewing, and distributing the podcast. And I have hard costs for my editor and for those hosting fees. And it really means so much to me that you find enough meaning and value in this podcast to pledge your support and to keep it going. And if you haven't had a chance to contribute, we've made it really easy for you. Just click the support button on the top of Urban Exodus website and pledge any amount that you like. Thank you again. I really couldn't continue to do this work without you. 2020 was a really hard year on so many levels, and you were, moving to a new place. And 2021 is only now starting to feel like we're reaching some semblance of normal. What has this really difficult time taught you, and how are you carrying that into your work in the future?
Well, 2020 kind of taught me not to wait to do things. I feel like, especially with doing co-starters at that time when we were doing it all on Zoom, I really just thought, I keep waiting for the perfect time to do what I want to do. And I just think that it taught me that nothing probably will ever align in the way that I have it in my head. So I got to a place where I just thought, I've always worked, I've always had a job. I've had a job since I was 14. And if I step away from getting a paycheck working in this kitchen and go out on my own, what's the worst that can happen? Is it a year from now, I run out of money and I have to get a job again that I've always had since I'm 14 and I'm 42, so I think that 2020 just made me realize that I can't put off what I really want to do. So it kind of gave me the courage to do that. And also I was inspired a little bit in 2020 when, I know other people probably didn't appreciate this, but when seed catalogs were selling out and you couldn't buy canning jars and stuff, I was like, yeah, go people. People are growing food and cooking food, and people are baking bread, and you can't even buy the ingredients to bake bread anymore. And so I don't know. I thought that was inspiring because I'm used to seeing people use things as entertainment, TV or music or sports or something. But I felt like 2020 food was people's entertainment. And that was really interesting for me to watch happen, on that scale. I was like, oh, wow, people are ordering things to their house as a treat and getting takeout and supporting local restaurants and baking with their kids. And there's all these people that cook professionally that are just going on the internet and sharing all of this amazing knowledge for free with people that we never had access to, they're famous chefs doing YouTube videos, and people are in their houses cooking along with them, and people are seeking out local farms because meat is empty on the shelves in the grocery store. And it's I'm never going to say that was a good thing, because that's terrible, the pandemic. I wish it had happened. But if there's a silver lining, it's how involved people got with gardening and cooking, in my opinion, and seeing people just share that knowledge really freely on the internet, because we don't always use the internet to connect in a really positive way. But I think we did last year.
Absolutely. I felt the exact same way as you. It was just so exciting to see people all of a sudden take a step back and be like, oh, I could tear up my lawn. I could grow a garden. Let me watch 10 YouTube videos and figure this out. And I really appreciate that about you too, because you are such a motivating and inspirational and teaching presence online for people. And there's no pretense there. It's just you can do this. This isn't hard. And you give people the tools. So I'd love to have you talk a little bit about your Patreon and how people can support your efforts and what they can find on there.
Well, so the Patreon I started last year, probably in the beginning of the pandemic, I guess, because in my mind, I thought, now that everyone's cooking for themselves so much more, they're asking me for recipes, and that's fine. I'll post a lot of pictures of food that I'm making and stuff, but writing out a recipe is a whole other job, so and that actually is my job. So I thought, I'm not trying to, I don't have to get paid for every single thing that I do, but I made the Patreon, and I made it $3 a month because I thought, whatever, $3 a month, I feel like is nothing. But if a number of people do it, then I'll feel like I'm getting paid in some way to actually sit down and write an essay about food, or, take a bunch of pictures while I'm cooking something and write down the recipe and then retest it a couple times so that I know it's going to be right when people do it. And even I tried a video. I'm terrible. It was just, I'm not technological. I'm not set up to produce videos myself of me cooking. And yeah, my video is basically just my my phone falling over a bunch of times off of a makeshift stand. So I don't try to do a lot of video content on there just because there aren't a lot of people on it. I feel like I started it just to say, hey, if I'm going to spend this many hours developing recipes and typing them out online, maybe I'll get a little something back for it. So that's basically what it is. I don't think, I usually post about once a week on there. Sometimes I do twice a week. Everything is really seasonal, what I'm doing on there. So I just wrote a 5,000 word essay about farm table and my thoughts on agriculture and the restaurant industry. And then this week I'd like to start doing some summer canning recipes for people, because I've been getting asked about that recently. And, if I do 3 or 4 a month, I think that that's a pretty good value for $3 a month. And I don't have any different tiers or anything. I have full-time work beyond, that. And I write for another organization that's just a local online publication, all things to do with wheeling, and I do food stuff for them. So I feel like between those two things, I like writing about food and I like to get paid a little bit for it. So the Patreon is not, some people probably, Patreon is probably their full-time job, but for me it's just a little extra thing. And maybe if you saw something on my Instagram or something and you thought I would really like to know how to make that, well, you could for $3.
We're starting to reach this point with kind of social media and sharing online, where creators or people who are creating things, creative people, are spending so much time creating this content. And so to be able to have that be a reciprocal relationship to a certain degree, so that it doesn't feel like it's just one-sided, where you're just making, giving. There's a little bit back. I think that that's great.
Yeah, and I think that some people do really well at that because I'm always amazed at how many people are, home cooks or something with blogs, or other people that do food styling or recipes. I am just stunned at the amount of information that people are giving away for free. But then I'm also realizing that those people are getting paid. There's a lot of ads and stuff involved in that, and
sponsorships.
Sponsorships and stuff. And to me, it's there's been a couple different times where people are like, oh, can I, I'll send you this thing and then you can do a post about it. And it's I search out the things that I like myself normally. It'd be really rare if somebody came to me with something and I was like, oh shit, I've been looking for that. I totally want to post about that. It seems, I don't like to do it because it just seems disingenuous if I did, I'm not trying to sell anything, because nobody that follows me on social media, hardly anybody even lives near me. So you're not even going to buy my food. I'm just trying to inspire you to search out similar things in the community that you live with, or maybe grow, a garden instead of your lawn, or maybe think about a different way you can use the peaches that are in season for your dinner,
I love that every place that you go, you make that place feel like home. I think that you just have this incredible knack for creating warm and inviting spaces using thrifted and repurposed materials that you find. What is your thrifting and design method? Do you have a strategy when you go into a thrift store, or when you're looking at a new space that you're moving into, to really make it your own?
Yeah, as far as thrifting, I have a strategy when I go I usually look at all the home stuff first. Now I'm to a point where I've done it so much that I really feel like I literally have everything I need. Like, I don't really go much anymore because I have gotten everything I've looked for, but I do go with certain things in mind. Like, I can go to an antique store. I really am looking for like a wicker picnic basket right now. So like, I'll have this thing in my head for something that I want to do, and I'll go to antique stores or thrift stores and look for it, but I don't look around and buy stuff I don't need. I'll almost immediately now just go right to that section, like, no picnic baskets. I won't look at the shoes. I won't pass by blankets or furniture or anything on the way out. I kind of go with a plan. I think when was furnishing a house, I was going a lot and looking around a lot. And I don't know, I like to look at different furniture sites and magazines and like design magazines and stuff. And I kind of like to take something that, maybe is something new and then look for a thrifted version of it, just to see if you can do it. I like to make things too sometimes, and I just feel like going a lot and looking around, and I guess I have sort of like an eclectic style. I don't know what it is, but
I just remember vividly walking into your home in Tennessee and it just feeling so comfortable and nice and colorful. And you were like, yeah, I thrifted all of these things. And most of the stuff in our house is thrifted. And I love to breathe new life into old things and like kind of put it all together. But
yeah, and I love color and I love changing it around too. I mean, that's something I do a lot. Like, I would say every 6 months to a year, at least, if I'm living in the same place, I like to change around all the rooms, like the way all the furniture is. And then I give things away. I have stacks of things all the time that I just give away to other people. A lot of times it's younger people that are just getting their first apartments or something. And I'm like, here, you take this. It's like, you get sick of things. Like, give something away to someone that it's new to them and they're all excited about it. And then you get to go and excitedly thrift for your own things again.
Do you have any advice for anyone, say that they didn't hop on the pandemic bandwagon, they didn't tear up their, yard or whatever to put in a garden? What advice would you have to them to get started, to like rip the Band-Aid off and just like plant their first things? How would you go about doing your first one?
Assuming that someone has like a lawn that they can use.
Maybe they're renting in an apartment and they like reach out to their landlord and they said that they could rip up the little side bit. What they should kind of prepare themselves for. How do they do that?
Well, I have a lawn now. I'm renting a house and it's a double lot. So there's a lot of lawn, and I did just contact the landlord, and that was the first step. I said, do you mind if I have a garden instead of a lawn? And they didn't care. I mean, I think if you're willing to just throw some grass seed on, if you're going to move, you'll probably be okay with it. The first thing that I did was get a tarp, like a silage tarp, and put it out to sort of try to kill the lawn, because the lawn is not easy to get rid of. So I did that. And even after doing that, the lawn wasn't easy to get rid of. I mean, all the grass is very dead, which was great. And all the weeds are really dead. But when I took that off, I had to rent a rear tine rototiller. I mean, I don't even think my friend and I initially thought that we could do it just with shovels and kind of spade the lawn into a garden, but that was not going to happen. I mean, I will never have to till it again. I did that one time. And after I did that, now we made garden beds and put a couple layers of compost over them. So when things change out, I can just pick them out. Like, once I picked all the radishes, I just went with a hoe down the row and just kind of lightly went over the soil and put a little bit more compost on. And then I was able to put basil in that row. So I think just initially getting started, getting rid of the lawn is going to be the hardest part, but covering it and then renting a powerful enough rototiller that it's a rear tine rototiller that is gas powered, that can really cut into the lawn. You're going to have to go over it a couple times too. But once you get it done, you'll hopefully never have to do it again.
I've taken a lot of your time today, almost an hour. I'll just end on a fun question because you love food. Food is your great passion, whether it's growing it, cooking it, writing about it. If you could survive, let's say 3 meals for the rest of your life, what would they be?
My God, this is going to be very telling of, I love fresh food, but two of those things right off the bat are burgers and pizza. Sorry, it's so American. But yeah, just because those two things can be very versatile. I feel like it wouldn't always be the same burger or the same pizza, but those things are like blank slates to me of all different kinds of ways that you can make them. And I guess I would pick a third would be, I don't know, I might want to go with Indian food for a third, like an Indian meal, because I like all the condiments and like I like how there's always, the combination of like sour stuff and salty stuff and sweet stuff. And yeah, I think it would be pizza, burgers, and Indian food.
What's your favorite meal to make? Is there any one particular meal that you just like love the process of making it?
I mean, I think anything that is fresh and in season. I like cooking out a lot. I generally don't really have people over for meals when it's not nice enough to be outside and cook outside. So I got one of those uni pizza ovens. It's like my pandemic splurge. And so I think that right now is my favorite to cook when, for other people, because I like making pizza dough and I like, having lots of different seasonal toppings and letting people make their own pizzas and making lots of different fresh salads that go with them. I really like to make Italian food. I like to make Sicilian food. It's food that I grew up eating. So I kind of like to share that part of my heritage with people too.
Well, Melissa, it's been such a pleasure to reconnect with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. Like I said, I've just been inspired by you since I met you back in 2015, and it's been really wonderful to see your journey. And I'm really excited for this next chapter for you to be realizing this dream of Midge's Kitchen and working towards something for yourself. I think that that's really powerful when you finally say, hey, I'm going to invest in my own ideas and my own vision. And it might never be the right time, but I'm going to do it. And so I really look forward to seeing the future for you. And thank you so much again for connecting with me today. And I look forward to staying in contact over the years as you start to build and grow.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Melissa Rebholz. Melissa is an incredibly wise and inspiring human. I love hearing her journey into food and farming, and I really appreciate her wise words on moving into a new community and starting a business. You've got to get involved. You've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to talk to people. Those people are the people who are going to cheer you on and support you once you open your doors. The inner strength that Melissa has harnessed to break free from a toxic relationship and start anew is really inspiring. And I hope anyone feeling trapped in an unsupportive relationship will feel empowered by hearing her journey. I encourage anyone living near or traveling through Wheeling to check out Midge's Kitchen. You can find a link to Melissa's Urban Exodus feature from 2015, links to Midge's Kitchen website, and Melissa's Patreon and social accounts by visiting the blog at urbanexodus.com. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Urban Exodus podcast. Urban Exodus is a labor of love and is only made possible by listener support. I do this work because the people I meet through this project give me energy and hope for the future. My mission is to promote the work of people manifesting good in the world. We are living in a time where there's an overwhelming feeling of dread, and I want this project to encourage people to be proactive and work towards finding creative solutions for both their individual happiness and our collective experience. You can support this work by clicking the support button at the top of urbanexodus.com, by buying an ad spot in an upcoming episode, by shopping our online store, or taking an in-person or online course through our workshops at How Hill Farm. We are also slowly getting our Patreon page together, and we'll be adding bonus features and other content there. So check out patreon.com/urbanexodus to learn more. Another way to support is by giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes and recommending Urban Exodus to your friends. Thank you again for helping me continue to do this work. I couldn't do it without all of you. You can find Urban Exodus on Instagram and Facebook at The Urban Exodus. To read more in-depth features on folks who ditched the city and went country, visit urbanexodus.com. Until next time, I'm Melissa Hessler, and this is The Urban Exodus.